All right, today's going to be a typical arm day. More focus on biceps. Um, I've been, cutting for a little longer than the videos have started, so I'm getting a sense of how I'm stacking up and exactly, what my weak points are. Arms are going to be a weak point. I know that, and I'm trying my best to, bring them up. There's nothing I can do. Train hard, eat as little as I can without cannibalizing as much muscle as I can. So I can just come out shredded because that's what I want to do, or at least as shredded as they can be. But I will say my arms are a weak point. I know that's going to be a weak point. Everything's a weak point at this point, but I'm going to be working it especially hard on my biceps. It's always been something where I've kind of felt like I could bring them up a little more. And today's approach, I've been thinking about it, and I'm going to start out with the cable curls, one arm each, not going past the 50s, maybe, 30s if I'm burning out, and get those done, pre-exhaust my biceps, before some kind of preacher curl or barbell curl, and then, at the end, the alternating curls where I can use just much less weight and get the same amount of stimulus. That's the goal and the name of the game right now, because I don't want to hurt myself, but I need to get that sufficient stimulus. I need to get my protein in, but right now we're not training for strength. We're training to keep as much as we can, but we're training as much as we can to preserve muscle. That's the main goal of it. So I'm going to go ahead and take my pre-workout and head on over to the gym. Arm day pleasantly surprised me. I'm feeling pretty good. I've maintained a lot of my strength, which means I'm not cutting too hard, but I am seeing, more definition. So I'm happy. I think I'm in a good spot. And really, the only issue I'm having now is, a little boredom during cardio because, you got your treadmill, you got to get your steps in. It's a little bit of boredom, but, it's going from having all this motivation, because a lot of people start their diets with a shit ton of motivation, and when they burn out fast and hard, and then they're eating out, they stop doing cardio, they stop going to the gym. That's the moment. I'm luckily too obsessed with the gym to stop. It's tough for me to get the cardio in, but I grit it out anyways because I need to. And part of making these videos honestly helps me because it keeps me accountable. If I fail, it's already out there. So, I think the main issue is just getting tired. You know, I'm on a decent deficit, and I've started timing my calories and mainly my carbs around my workouts, around my cardio. And a lot of people like to do fasted cardio. You know, I think to each their own, but I don't think it makes a difference. If I'm going to do more cardio, if I eat before and have some carbs, then if I were to just do it fasted, I think, you know, that's a net positive, because I'm going to eat the same amount of calories either way, you know. And it's just about will, you know. I'm using a lot of my motivation to, as Coach tries to ruin the video, I'm using a lot of my motivation focusing it on cardio, because that's, you know, my biggest weakness. I have no problem going to the gym, you know, even if I'm tired. I love hitting back, love hitting chest, legs, arms. It doesn't matter, you know. I'd never take a rest day if I had to, but cardio, it's just so monotonous that you get to the point where you don't want to do it. And then, you know, is that inherently bad? Not necessarily. Nobody wants to do cardio necessarily. You know, there's a few people that like running, jogging, you know, good for you, but, you know, I'm not one of those people. So it just comes down to me not wanting to fail, you know. It's my biggest fear. That's why I want to get as shredded as I can, because I don't want to go out on stage and embarrass myself. I want to go out and, you know, as stupid as it sounds, I want to not make an appearance, but, you know, arrive. It sounds dumb, but I don't want it to just be a flash in the pan. I want to go out and I want to set a baseline to where I can keep competing and keep getting better and, you know, be in the circuit for years to come instead of just flaming out. And so that's really what's on my mind, because this is, you know, it is the first show, lowest expectations, but somehow they're higher for me. So I'm going to finish up my calories for the day, go to bed and get my rest in for cardio tomorrow. And most likely I think it's going to be a weak point day. We'll see. But it was a good workout, so I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I will see you guys tomorrow for the next workout.